The text you are about to listen to, by James Allen, was written in the style of its time. That is to say, in somewhat archaic English, and written by men for men. But, as Allen himself has asserted, the teachings are meant for mankind, not just for men. The material is utterly profound and life-changing, so we have taken the liberty of adapting and updating the English to make it more neutral and accessible to modern generations, male and female alike, without changing the meaning or intention of the text, and without making any copyright claims regarding our versions of his sublime works. The original versions can be found freely available online in the public domain for those who might prefer to read them in their original form. Thank you, and bless you. The Life Triumphant. Mastering the Heart and Mind, by James Allen. Foreword. Every being lives in their own mental world. Your joys and sorrows are the creations of your own mind, and are dependent upon the mind for their existence. In the midst of the world, darkened with much ignorance and sorrow, in which the majority live, there abides another world, lighted up with shining virtues and unpolluted joy, in which the perfect ones live. This world can be found and entered, and the way to it is by self-control and righteous excellence. It is the world of the perfect life, and it rightly belongs to you, who are not complete until crowned with perfection. The perfect life is not the faraway, impossible thing that those who are in darkness imagine it to be. It's supremely possible, and very near and real. You remain a craving, weeping, ignorant, repenting creature just so long as you will to do so, by clinging to those weak conditions. But when you will to shake off your dark dreams and to rise, you arise and achieve. James Allen. Hail to thee, mankind divine, the conqueror of sin and shame and sorrow. No more weak, worm-like and grovelling art thou. No, nor wilt thou again bow down to things that wreak scourgings and death upon thee. Thou dost rise triumphant in thy strength, good, pure, and wise. Chapter 1. Faith and Courage. For those who will fight bravely and not yield, there is triumphant victory over all the dark things of life. I state this at the beginning so that you may know there is no uncertainty about it. In the course of this book I will show what the elements are in character and conduct, which will go to build up the life of calm strength and superlative victory. To stand face to face with truth, to arrive after innumerable wanderings and pains, at wisdom and bliss, not to be finally defeated and cast out, but ultimately to triumph over every inward foe. Such is your divine destiny, such is your glorious goal, and every saint, sage, and savior has declared this. In the present stage of the life of humanity, comparatively few reach this place of triumph, though all will reach it eventually. Yet there is a glorious company of perfect ones who have attained in the past, and their number is being added to with each succeeding age. The vast majority are as yet learners in the school of life, and most die as learners. But there are some who, in this life, through fixity of purpose and strenuous fighting against darkness, pain, and ignorance, acquire a right knowledge of life and pass joyfully beyond the pupil stage. You're not to remain a pupil forever in the universe, to be whipped for foolishness and errors. When you will and wish, you can set your mind upon your task and master the lessons of life, becoming a confident and skilled scholar, living in understanding and peace, and not in ignorance and misery. The sorrows of life are profound and deeply rooted, but they can be fathomed and rooted out. The passions and emotions of human nature are, in their ungoverned state, overwhelming and painfully conflicting, but they can be so softened down, harmonized, and wisely directed and understood as to become obedient servants for the outworking of enlightened purposes. The difficulties of life are great, its battle fierce, and its wished-for issues are uncertain and elusive, so much so that every hour men and women are breaking down under the strain. Yet these conditions have no objective and arbitrary existence. In their true nature, they are subjective and purely mental, and can be transcended. There is no inherent and permanent evil in the universal order, and the mind can be lifted up to the righteous altitude where evil can touch it no more. A steadfast faith in an eternal and universal justice, in an overruling good, is the prelude to that life triumphant. Those who aim to become strong, serene, and steadfast at heart must, at the onset, have no doubt that the heart of life is good. Those of you who are to gaze upon the cosmic order and experience the rapture of emancipation must realize that there is no disorder in your life but that which you create. This realization is difficult. So prone is the mind in its imperfect stages to self-pity and self-justification. But it can be attained, and must be attained by those of you who are to live the freed life. At first it must be believed, and the belief must be adhered to until it ripens into realization and knowledge. The sufferings of life are greatly reduced when they are accepted as disciplinary experiences, and those of faith do accept them as such. The sufferings of life are transcended and put away when all experiences are accounted good and are utilized in the development of character, and those of knowledge do regard and utilize them as such. Faith is the grey dawn which precedes the full and perfect day of knowledge. Without it, there can be no attainment of strength, no permanent security of heart. Those of you of faith do not succumb when difficulties present themselves. You do not despair when troubles overtake you. However steep and dark your path may seem, you look forward to a brighter pathway ahead. You see a destination of rest and light beyond. They who have no faith in the triumph of good ignominiously succumb to the elements of evil. And this must be so, for those who do not elevate good elevate evil or ignorance, and seeing ignorance as the master of life, receive the wages of evil. There are those who, having yielded to defeat in the battle of life, talk thoughtlessly about the wrongs they have suffered at the hands of others. They believe, and try to make others believe, that they would have been successful or rich or famous but for the treachery and villainy of those about them. They tell for the 1000th time how they've been deceived, defrauded, and degraded by others. They imagine that they themselves are all trust, all innocence, all honesty and good nature, and that nearly everyone else is all that is bad and malicious. They tell how they would have been just as prosperous and honored as others if they had been as selfish as those others, and that their great drawback and the chief source in themselves of their failures is that they were born with too great an endowment of unselfishness. Such self-praising complainers cannot distinguish between good and evil, and their faith in human nature and the goodness of the universe is dead. Looking upon others, they have eyes for evil only. Looking upon themselves, they see only suffering innocence. Rather than discover any evil in themselves, they would have all humanity bad. In their hearts they have enthroned the wretched demon of evil as the lord of life, and see in the course of things only a selfish scramble in which the good is always crushed and the evil rises triumphant. Blind to their own foolishness, ignorance, and weakness, they see nothing but injustice in their fate, nothing but misery and wretchedness in their present condition. Those of you who would have even a useful and successful life, yet alone a spiritual, noble, and victorious one, must at once root out and cast away this wretched condition of mind that negates all that is good and pure and gives preeminence to all that is base and impure. Misfortune, misery, and defeat most surely await those who believe that dishonesty, deceit, and selfishness are the best weapons whereby to achieve a successful life. What courage and strength can you develop And what quiet and happiness can you enjoy if you believe that in order to keep pace with others, you must continually deny and discourage the better qualities of your nature? Those who believe that evil is more powerful than good, and that bad men and women have the best of life, are still involved in the elements of evil, and, being so involved, they suffer, must necessarily suffer, defeat. It may appear to you that the world is given over to wickedness, that the bad prosper and the good fail, that there is nothing but chance, injustice, and disorder. But do not believe this. Regard it as an elusive appearance. Conclude that you do not see life as it really is, that you have not yet fathomed the causes of things, and that when you can look upon life through a purer heart and a wiser mind, you will see and understand its equity. And truly, when you do look so at life, you will see good where you now see evil, order where there now appears to be disorder, and justice where now injustice seems to prevail. The universe is a cosmos, not a chaos, and the bad do not prosper. It is true there is much evil in the world, otherwise there would be no necessity for righteous aims, but there is also much misery in the world, and the evil and the misery are related as cause and effect. It's equally true that there is much good in the world, and much abiding gladness, and the good and the gladness are related as cause and effect. Those of you who have acquired that faith in the power and supremacy of good, which no apparent injustice, no amount of suffering, and no catastrophe can shake, will pass through all emergencies, all trials and difficulties, with a sublime courage that defies the demons of doubt and despair. You may not succeed in all your plans. You may even encounter much failure. But when you fail, it will be that you may frame nobler purposes and ascend to higher achievements. You will only fail in order to reach a success greater than that of which you first dreamed. Your life will not, cannot be a failure. Some of its details will fail, but this will be but the breaking of weak links in the chain of character and events, in order that the whole may be made more strong and complete. There is an animal courage which can calmly face the fire of an enemy in battle, or the fierce rage of beasts, but which fails in the battle of life and breaks down when confronted with the beasts that rage within one's own heart. It requires a higher, diviner courage to remain calm in the hour of deprivation and calamity than in the heat of battle, to overcome self than to overcome another. And this diviner courage is the companion of faith. A mere theological belief, commonly confused with faith, will not avail, will not do. Beliefs about God, Jesus, creation, etc. are merely surface opinions, derived chiefly from custom, which do not reach down to your real life and have no power to bestow faith. Such beliefs may accompany faith, but they are distinct from it. Frequently, those who hold most tenaciously to particular beliefs about God, Jesus, and the Bible are most lacking in faith. That is, they give way to complaint, despondency, and grief immediately after some petty trouble overtakes them. If you are given to irritability, anxiety, hopelessness, and lamentations over the simple things of life, know that, in spite of your religious belief or metaphysical philosophy, you lack faith. For where faith is, there is courage. There is fortitude, there is steadfastness and strength. People's opinions are to be taken with a pinch of salt, as they change with every new breeze of thought. They have very little part in the reality of things, being the bubbles of a surface effervescence. But behind all opinions there is the same human heart. The godless are those who are goodless, even though they may be members of churches and make great professions of faith in God. The godly are those who are goodly, even though they make no profession of religion. The complainers and moaners are the faithless and unbelieving. Those who deny and belittle the power of good, and in their lives and actions affirm and magnify the power of evil, are the only real atheists. Faith bestows that sublime courage that rises superior to the petty and selfish disappointments and troubles of life, that acknowledges no defeat except as a step to victory, that is strong to endure, patient to wait, and energetic to struggle. It perceives the benign law of truth in all things, and is assured of the final triumph of the heart and the kingly power of the mind. Light up, then, the lamp of faith in your heart, and walk through the darkness guided by its illuminating rays. Its light is dim and cannot be compared with the sunlight brilliance of knowledge, but it suffices to lead one safely through the mists of doubt and the black darkness of despair, along the narrow, thorny ways of sickness and sorrow, and over the treacherous plains of temptation and uncertainty. It enables you to ward off and outstrip the foul beasts that rages in the jungle of your heart, and to reach safely upon the open plains of a pure life and the mountain levels of conquest where the dim light of faith is no longer needed. Because, leaving behind you all the darkness, all the doubt, error, and sorrow, you enter into a new consciousness and upon a higher round of life, works, and acts, and live self-contained and peaceful in the full and glorious light of knowledge. Chapter 2. Manliness, Womanliness, and Sincerity. Before a man can be truly godly, he must be manly. Before a woman can be truly godly, she must be womanly. There can be no true goodness apart from righteous strength. Simpering, pretense, artificial behavior, flatteries, insincerities, and smiling hypocrisies, let these things forever be destroyed and banished from our minds. Evil, the result of ignorance, is inherently weak, ineffectual, and cowardly. Good is essentially strong, effective, and courageous. In teaching men and women to be good, I teach them to be strong, free, self-reliant. They greatly misunderstand me and the principles which I enunciate, who imagine that because I teach gentleness, purity, and patience, I teach the cultivation of an effeminate weakness. It is only the manly man and the womanly woman who can properly understand those divine qualities. No one is better equipped to achieve the life triumphant than they who, along with active righteous qualities and a high sense of purity and honor, are also possessed of the strong animal nature of the normal man or woman. That animal force which, in various forms, surges within you, and which, in the hour of excitement, carries you blindly away, causing you to forget your higher nature and to forfeit your righteous dignity and honor. That same force controlled, mastered, and rightly directed will endow you with a divine strength by which you can achieve the highest, noblest, and blissful victories of true living. The savage within you is to be corrected and disciplined into obedience. You are to be the master of your heart, your mind, yourself. You're only weak and abject when you give up the reins of government to the lower, instead of directing the lower by the higher. Your passions are to be your servants and slaves, not your masters. See that you keep them in their places, duly controlled and commanded, and they shall render you faithful, strong, and happy service. You are not vile. There is no part of your body or mind that is vile. Nature does not make mistakes. The universe is framed on truth. All your functions, faculties, and powers are good, and to direct them rightly is wisdom, holiness, happiness. To direct them wrongly is foolishness, ignorance, and misery. The vast majority waste themselves in excesses, in bad tempers, hatreds, gluttonies, and unworthy and unlawful pleasures, and then blame life. They should blame themselves. You should have more self-respect than to abuse your nature in any way. You should command yourself always, should avoid excitement and hurry. You should be too noble to give way to anger, to resent the actions and opinions of others, or to argue fruitlessly with an abusive and difficult antagonist. A quiet, unobtrusive, and unoffending dignity is the chief mark of a ripe and perfect maturity. Honor others and respect yourself. Choose your own path and walk it with a firm, unflinching step, but avoid a meddlesome interference with others. In the true righteous man or woman, opposing qualities are blended and harmonized. A yielding kindness accompanies an unbending strength. You adapt yourself gently and wisely to others without sacrificing the steadfast principles upon which your righteousness is built. To have that iron strength that can go calmly to death rather than yield even a fragment of truth, along with that tender sympathy that can shield the weak and mistaken enemy, is to be righteous with divine maturity. Be true to the dictates of your own conscience and respect all who do the same, even though their conscience should lead them in a direction the reverse of your own. One of the most unrighteous tendencies is to pity another because they choose opinions or religions contrary to those of your own. Why pity anyone because they're an agnostic or an atheist or a Buddhist or a Christian, because they do not hold this opinion or that belief? Such pity should be rightly named contempt. The objective of pity is to feel for the weak, the afflicted, and the helpless. Pity never says, "I pity you." It does kind deeds. It is arrogance that professes pity for the strong, the self-reliant, for those who have the courage to mark out their own path and to walk it boldly. Why should they be forced to hold my opinion or yours? If what I say and do appeals to their reason and conscience as right, then they will be one with me and work hand in hand with me. But if my work is not their work, they are still, nonetheless, my brother or sister. They have their duty, though it is not my duty. When I meet anyone who is self-respecting and who dares to think for themselves, I will salute them as my equal, and not harbor in my heart a contemptible pity for them just because they reject my conclusions. If we are to be responsible, self-acting beings in a law-begotten universe, let us be masters of our own wills and respect the free will of others. If we are to be strong and righteous, let us be large-hearted and magnanimous. If we are to triumph over the miseries of life, let us rise superior to the pettiness of our nature. The vast majority weep in their weakness and cry out in misery of heart and degradation of mind. How obvious, then, is the way of freedom? How sublime the task of triumph? Be master of yourself. Eliminate weakness. Exorcise the mocking demon selfishness, in whom is all weakness and misery. Don't pander to unnatural cravings, to unlawful desires, or to morbid self-love and self-pity. Give them no quarter, but promptly stamp them out with disciplinary decision and strength. You should hold yourself, as it were, in the hollow of your hand. You should be able to take up and to lay down. You should know how to use things and not be used by them. You should neither be the helpless captive of luxury nor the whipped slave of want, but should be self-contained and self-sufficient, master of yourself under all conditions. You must train and direct your will in the way of self-mastery, which is the way of obedience. Obedience to the law of your nature. Disobedience to law is the supreme evil in mankind, the source of all sin and sorrow. In their ignorance, they imagine they can triumph over law and subdue the wills of others. In this way, they destroy their power. You can triumph over your disobedience, over ignorance, sin, egotism, and lawlessness. You can conquer self, and herein lies your righteous strength and divine power. You can comprehend the law of your being and obey it as a child obeys the will of its father. You can sit the crowned king of all your functions and faculties, using them wisely in unselfish service, and not as instruments of selfishness and greed. There is no bad habit that you cannot uproot, no unconscious behavior that you cannot keep under control, no sorrow that you cannot understand and conquer. Know your worth, then, and keep things under your feet. Do not peep or steal or skulk up and down with the air of a charity boy or an interloper in the world which exists for you. A righteous self-reliance is not only compatible with, but is the accompaniment of, a divine humility. You are only arrogant and egotistic when you assume authority over others. You cannot claim nor exercise too great an authority over yourself. Strong self-command with gentle consideration for others combine to make the truly righteous man or woman. To begin with, you must be honest, upright, sincere. Deceit is the blindest nonsense, and hypocrisy is the weakest thing on earth. In trying to deceive others, you most of all deceive yourself. You should be so free from slyness, cleverness, meanness, and deceit as to be able to look everyone in the face with a clear, open, unflinching gaze, free from shame and confusion, and with no inward shrinking or misgivings. Without sincerity you are but a hollow mask, and whatsoever work you attempt to do, it will be lifeless and ineffectual. Out of a hollow vessel nothing but the sound of hollowness can come, and from insincerity nothing but empty words can proceed. Many are not consciously hypocrites, yet fall victim, thoughtlessly, to little insincerities which undermine happiness and destroy the righteous fabric of their character. Some of these people go regularly to their place of worship. They pray daily, year after year, for a purer heart and life, yet come from their devotions to vilify an enemy, or worse still, to ridicule or slander an absent friend for whom, when they meet him or her, they will have nothing but smiles and smooth words. The pitiful part of it is that they are totally unconscious of their insincerity, and when their friends desert them, they speak complainingly of the faithlessness and hollowness of the world, and of people generally, and tell you sadly that there are no true friends in this world. Truly, for such there are no abiding friendships, for insincerity, even if not seen, is felt, and those who are incapable of bestowing trust and truth cannot receive it. Be true to others, and others will be true to you. Think well of an enemy, and defend the absent friend. If you have lost faith in human nature, discover where you have gone wrong yourself. In the Confucian Code of Morals, sincerity is one of the 5 great virtues, and Confucius speaks of it in the following way. It is sincerity which places a crown upon your lives. Without it, our best actions would be valueless. The seemingly virtuous, mere hypocrites, and the shining light which dazzles us with its splendor, but a poor passing gleam ready to be extinguished by the slightest breath of passion. To be pure in mind, you must be free from self-deception. You must hate vice as you would a disagreeable odor, and love virtue as you would some beautiful object. There can be no self-respect without it, and this is why the superior man must be guarded in his hours of solitude. The worthless man secretly employs his idle moments in vicious acts, and there is no limit to his wickedness. In the presence of the pure he plays the hypocrite, and puts forward none but his good qualities. Yet how does this disguise hide him when his true character is revealed to the first scrutinizing glance? It has been said that there is a strict watch kept over that which is pointed at by many hands, and gazed at by many eyes. It is in solitude, then, that the upright man has the greatest reason to be guarded. So, as a sincere man or woman, you do not do or say anything which you would be ashamed of if it were brought into light. Your uprightness of spirit enables you to walk upright and confident among your contemporaries. Your presence is a strong protection, and your words are direct and powerful because they are true. Whatever your work may be, it prospers. Though you may not always please the ears of others, you win their hearts. They rely on you, trust you, and honor you. Courage, self-reliance, sincerity, generosity, and kindness. These are the virtues which constitute a robust righteousness. Without them, you are but clay in the hands of circumstances, a weak, wavering thing that cannot rise into the freedom and joy of a true life. Everyone should cultivate and foster these virtues, and as you succeed in living them, you will prepare to achieve the life triumphant. I see coming upon the earth a new race of men and women, men who will be men indeed, strong, upright, noble, too wise to stoop to anger, uncleanliness, rivalry, and hatred. Women who would be women indeed, gentle, truthful, pure, too compassionate to stoop to gossip, slander, and deception. From their wombs will proceed superior beings of the same noble type, and the dark fiends of error and evil will fall back at their approach. These noble men and women will regenerate the earth. They will dignify mankind and vindicate nature, restoring humanity to love, happiness, and peace. And the life of victory over sin and sorrow will be established in the earth. Chapter 3. Energy and Power. How wonderful is the universal energy, never tiring, inexhaustible, and apparently eternal in its operation. It moves in atom and in star, informing the fleeting shapes of tune with its restless, glowing, pulsating power. You are a portion of this creative energy, and it manifests in you through a combination of mental faculties as affection, passion, intelligence, morality, reason, understanding, and wisdom. You are not merely a blind conductor of energy, but you consciously use, control, and direct it. Slowly, but with certainty, you are gaining control of the forces without, and are making them do obedient service. And you will just as surely gain control of the forces within, the subtle energies of thought, and direct them into channels of harmony and happiness. Your true place in the cosmos is that of a king, not a slave, a commander under the law of good, and not a helpless tool in the reign of evil. Your own body and mind are the dual dominion over which you are to reign, a lord of truth, the master of yourself, the wise user and controller of your store of pure, eternal, creative energy. You walk the earth unashamed, strong, valiant, tender, and kind, no longer prostrate in self-abasement, but walking erect in the dignity of perfect righteousness, not groveling in selfishness and remorse, nor crying for pardon and mercy, but standing firm and free in the sublime majesty of a stainless life. Mankind has long regarded itself as vile, weak, and unworthy, and has been content to remain so. But in the new era, which has just now burst upon the world, you are to make a glorious discovery that you are pure, powerful, and noble when you rise up and will. The rising up is not against any outward enemy, not against neighbor, nor governments, nor laws, nor spirits, nor principalities, but against the ignorance, foolishness, and misery which plague you in the dominion of your own mind. Because it's only by ignorance and foolishness that you are slavish. Your kingdom is restored by knowledge and wisdom. Let those of you who will preach your weakness and helplessness, but I will teach you strength and power. I write for mature men and women, not for babes, for those who are eager to learn and earnest to achieve, for those who will put away, for the world's good, a petty personal indulgence, a selfish desire, a mean thought, and live on as though it were not, without craving and regret. The truth is not for the trivial and the thoughtless. The life triumphant is not for part-timers and procrastinators. You are a master. If you were not, you couldn't act against the law. So, your so-called weakness is an indication of strength. Your sin is the inversion of your capacity for holiness. For what is your weakness and sin but misdirected energy, misapplied power? In this sense, the wrongdoers are strong, not weak, but they are ignorant and exert their strength in wrong directions instead of right, against the law of things instead of with it. Suffering is the recoil of misdirected strength. The bad men and women become good by reversing their conduct. If you are weeping over your sins, stop committing those sins and establish yourself in their opposing virtues. It's in this way that weakness is converted into strength, helplessness into power, and suffering into bliss. By turning your energies from the old channels of vice and directing them into new channels of virtue, the sinner becomes a saint. While the universal energy may be unlimited, in particular forms its sum is strictly limited. You are possessed of a given amount of energy, and you can use it or misuse it, can conserve and concentrate it, or dissipate and disperse it. Power is concentrated energy. Wisdom is that energy adapted to beneficent ends. Those who direct all their energies towards one great purpose and patiently work and wait for its fulfillment, sacrificing their desires in other and more pleasant directions, are men and women of influence and power. Those who, thinking chiefly of pleasure, gratify the desire of the hour, or follow the whim and impulse of the moment, and so drift thoughtlessly into peevishness and poverty of mind, are men and women of foolishness and weakness. The energy used in one direction is not available for use in other directions. This is a universal law both in mind and matter. Emerson calls it the law of compensation. Gain in a given direction necessitates loss in its opposite direction. The force placed on one scale is deducted from the other scale. Nature is always aiming to strike a balance. The energy which is spent in idleness is not available for work. The pleasure seeker cannot also be a truth seeker. The force wasted in a fit of bad temper is taken from your store of virtue, particularly the virtue of patience. Spiritually, this law of compensation is the law of sacrifice. Selfish pleasure must be sacrificed if purity is to be gained. Hatred must be yielded up if love is to be acquired. Vice must be renounced if virtue is to be embraced. The earnest practitioner soon discovers that if they are to accomplish anything that is successful, strong, and enduring in worldly, intellectual, or spiritual channels, they must curb their desires and sacrifice much that seems sweet. In fact, even much that seems important. Hobbies, bodily and mental indulgences, enticing companionships, alluring pleasures, and all work that doesn't tend to some central purpose in your life must be sacrificed by those of you of strong resolve. You open your eyes to the fact that time and energy are strictly limited, so you economize the former and concentrate the latter. The foolish waste their energies in swinish ease and gluttonous indulgence, in frivolous pleasures and empty talk, in hateful thoughts and irritable outbursts of passion, in vain controversy and intrusive interference. They then complain that many are more fortunately equipped than they are for a useful and successful or great life. And they envy their honored neighbor who has sacrificed self to duty and has devoted all their energies to the faithful performance of the business of their own life. He who is just speaks the truth and does what is his own business. Him the world will hold dear. Attend to your own business, concentrating all your energies upon the perfect accomplishment of the task of your life, not stepping aside to condemn or interfere with the duties of others, and you will find life simple, strong, and happy. The universe is enclosed with goodness and strength, and it protects the strong and the good. Evil, ignorance, and weakness are self-destructive. Dissipation is annihilation. All nature loves strength. I see no inherent cruelty in the survival of the fittest. It is a spiritual as well as a natural law. The stronger qualities of the beast are fittest to evolve to a higher type. The nobler, righteous qualities in you are your liberators, and it is well that they should dominate and ultimately crush out the unworthy habits and tendencies. It is most certain that if you give dominion to the lower, you attract destruction, and will not survive, either in the struggle of life without or the battle of truth within. The life given to the lower is lost to the higher. In fact, it is finally also lost to the lower, and so all is lost, because evil is ultimately nothingness. But the life given to the higher is preserved, and is not lost to anything, for while it sacrifices much that the world holds precious, it doesn't sacrifice anything that is precious in reality. The untrue and worthless must perish, and those of you who consecrate yourself to the good and the true are content that they should perish, and so eventually you stand where sacrifice ends, and all is gain. You survive in the struggle of life without, and you conquer in the battle of truth within. First, then, be strong. Strength is the firm basis on which is built the temple of the triumphant life. Without a central motive and fixed resolve, your life will be a poor, weak, drifting, unstable thing. Let the act of the moment be governed by the deep, abiding purpose of the heart. You will act differently at different times, but the act will not be wrong if the heart is right. You may fall and go astray at times, especially under great stress, but you will quickly regain yourself, and you will grow wiser and stronger thereby, so long as you guide yourself by the righteous compass within, and do not throw it away to gratify indulgence and give yourself up to uncertain drifting. Follow your conscience, be true to your convictions, do at the moment what you regard as right, and put away all procrastination, vacillation, and fear. If you are convinced that in the performance of your duty under certain circumstances, the severest measures are necessary, carry out those measures, and let there be no uncertainty about it. Err on the side of strength rather than weakness. The measures you adopt may not be the best, but if they are the best that you know, then your plain duty is to carry them out. By so doing, you will discover the better way if you are anxious for progress and are willing to learn. Deliberate beforehand by all means, but when it is time for action, do not hesitate. Avoid anger and stubbornness, lust and greed. The angry are the weak. The stubborn, who refuse to learn or mend their ways, are the foolish. They grow old in folly, and grey hairs do not bring them reverence or honor. The sensationalist has energy for pleasure only, and reserves none for righteousness and self-respect. The greedy are blind to the nobility of human nature and the glory of a true life. They spend their energies in perpetuating the miseries of hell instead of enjoying the happiness of heaven. The strength is within you, and you can spend it in burrowing downward or in climbing upward. You can dissipate it in selfishness or conserve it in goodness. The same energy will enable you to become a beast or a god. The course along which you direct it will determine its effect. Do not entertain the thought, "My mind is weak," but convert weakness into strength and energy into power by redirecting your mental forces. Turn your thoughts into noble channels. Put away vain longings and foolish regrets. Abolish complaint and self-condolence, and have no dalliance with evil. Lift your face upward, rise up in your divine strength, and spurn from your mind and life all meanness and weakness. Do not live the false life of a whining slave, but live in the true life of a conquering master. Chapter 4. Self-Control and Happiness. When mental energy is allowed to follow the line of least resistance and to fall into easy channels, it is called weakness. When it is gathered, focused, and forced into upward and different directions, it becomes power, and this concentration of energy and acquisition of power is brought about by means of self-control. In speaking of self-control, one is easily misunderstood. It should not be associated with a destructive repression or coercion, but with a constructive expression. The process is not one of death, but of life. It is a divine and masterly transmutation in which the weak is converted into the strong, the coarse into the fine, and the base into the noble, in which virtue takes place of vice, and dark passion is lost in bright intelligence. Those who merely smother up and hide away their real nature, without any higher object in view than to create a good impression upon others concerning their character, are practicing hypocrisy and not self-control. As the mechanic transmutes coal into gas and water into steam, and then concentrates and utilizes the finer forces for the comfort and convenience of others, so those of you who intelligently practice self-control transmute your lower inclinations into finer qualities of intelligence and mortality to the increase of your own and the world's happiness. You are happy, wise, and great in the measure that you control yourself. You are miserable, foolish, and mean in the measure that you allow your animal nature to dominate your thoughts and actions. When you control yourself, you control your life, your circumstances, your destiny, and wherever you go, you carry your happiness with you as an abiding possession. Those who do not control themselves are controlled by passions, by their circumstances and their fate, and if they cannot gratify the desire of the moment, they are disappointed and miserable. They depend on external things for their fitful happiness. There is no force in the universe which can be annihilated or lost. Energy is transformed, not destroyed. To shut the door on old and bad habits is to open it to new and better ones. Renunciation precedes regeneration. Every self-indulgence, every forbidden pleasure, every hateful thought renounced is transformed into something more purely and permanently beautiful. Where debilitating excitements are cut off, there spring up rejuvenating joys. The seed dies that the flower may appear. The grub perishes, but the dragonfly comes forth. Truly, the transformation is not instantaneous, nor is the transition a pleasant and painless process. Nature demands effort and patience as the price of growth. In the march of progress, every victory is contested with struggle and pain, but the victory is achieved and it abides. The struggle passes, the pain is only temporary. To demolish a firmly fixed habit, to break up a mental tendency that has become automatic with long use, and to force into birth and growth a fine characteristic or lofty virtue. To accomplish this necessitates a painful metamorphosis, a transitional period of darkness to pass through for which patience and endurance are required. This is where the vast majority fail. This is where they slip back into their old, easy and animal ruts, and abandon self-control as too strenuous and severe. Thus they fall short of permanent happiness, and the life of triumph over evil is hidden from their eyes. The permanent happiness which they seek in dissipation, excitement, and abandonment to unworthy pleasure is found only in the life which reverses all this, the life of self-control. So far as you deviate from perfect self-command, just so far do you fall short of perfect happiness. You sink into misery and weakness, the lowest limit of which is madness, entire lack of mental control, the condition of irresponsibility. Insofar as you approximate to perfect self-command, just so near do you approach to perfect happiness, and rise into joy and strength. So glorious are the possibilities of such divine righteousness that no limit can be set to its grandeur and bliss. If you will understand how intimately, indeed how inseparably self-control and happiness are associated, you have only to look into your own heart and upon the world around to find there the joy-destroying effects of uncontrolled habits and tendencies. Look upon the lives of men and women. You will perceive how the hasty word, the bitter retort, the act of deception, the blind prejudice and foolish resentment bring misery and even ruin in their wake. Look into your own life. What days of consuming remorse, of restless anxiety, and of crushing sorrow rise up before your mind? Periods of intense suffering through which you have passed through lack of self-control. But in the right life, the well-governed life, the victorious life, all these things pass away. New conditions arrive, and purer, more spiritual instruments are employed for the achievement of happy ends. There is no more remorse, because there is no more wrongdoing. There is no more anxiety, because there is no more selfishness. There is no more sorrow, because truth is the source of action. The much desired thing which self pursues with breathless and uncontrolled eagerness, yet fails to overtake, comes unbidden and begs to be admitted to those of you who work and wait in perfect self-command. Hatred, impatience, greed, self-indulgence, vain ambitions and blind desires, the instruments by which self shapes its ill-finished existence, what clumsy tools they are, and how ignorant and unskillful they are who employ them. Love, patience, kindness, self-discipline, transmuted ambitions and chastened desires, instruments of truth, by which is shaped a well-finished existence. What perfect tools they are, and how wise and skillful are they who use them. Whatsoever is gained by feverish haste and selfish desire is attained in fuller measure by quietness and renunciation. Nature will not be hastened. It brings all perfection in due season. Truth will not be commanded. It has its conditions and must be obeyed. Nothing is more superfluous than haste and anger. The vast majority have to learn that they cannot command things, but they can command themselves. that they cannot coerce the wills of others, but they can mold and master their own will, and things serve those who serve truth. People seek the guidance of those who are masters of themselves. It is a little understood, yet simple and profound truth, that those who cannot command themselves under the severest external stress are unfit to guide others or to control affairs. It is the fundamental principle in the righteous and political teachings of Confucius that before attempting to govern affairs, you should learn to govern yourself. Those who habitually give way under pressure to hysterical suspicions, outbursts of resentment, and explosions of anger are unfit for weighty responsibilities and lofty duties, and usually fail sooner or later, even in the ordinary duties of life, such as the management of their own family or business. Lack of self-control is foolishness, and folly cannot take precedence over wisdom. Those of you who are learning how to subdue and control your turbulent, wandering thoughts are becoming wiser every day. Though for a time the temple of joy will not be completed, you will gather strength in laying its foundations and building its walls, and the day will come when, like a wise master builder, you will rest at peace in the beautiful habitation which you have built. Wisdom inheres in self-control, and in wisdom is pleasantness and peace. The life of self-control is no desert of deprivation, no wilderness of monotony. Renunciation there is, but it is a renunciation of the ephemeral and false in order that the abiding and true may be realized. Enjoyment is not cut off, it is intensified. Enjoyment is life. It is the slavish desire for it that kills. Is there anywhere a more miserable being than he or she who is always longing for some new sensation? Is there anywhere a more blessed being than he or she who, by self-control, is satisfied, calm, and enlightened? Who has most of physical life and joy? The glutton, the drunkard, and the sensationalist who lives for pleasure only? Or the temperate one who holds their body in subjection, considering its needs and obeying its uses? I was once eating a ripe, juicy apple as it came from the tree, and a man near me said, "I would give anything if I could enjoy an apple like that." I asked, "Well, why can't you?" His answer was, "I've drunk whiskey and smoked tobacco until I've lost all enjoyment in such things." In pursuit of elusive enjoyments, we lose the abiding joys of life. And as those who control their senses have most of physical life, joy, and strength, so those who control their thoughts have most of spiritual life, bliss, and power. Because not only happiness, but knowledge and wisdom are also revealed by self-control. As the avenues of ignorance and selfishness are closed, the open gates of knowledge and enlightenment appear. Virtue attained is knowledge gained. The pure mind is an enlightened mind. Control yourself well, and you have well-being. I hear some speak of the monotony of goodness. If looking for things in the spirit which one has given up in the letter were goodness, then indeed it would be monotonous. As a being of self-control, you do not merely give up your base pleasures, you abandon all craving for them. You press forward and do not look back, and fresh beauties, new glories, sublimer vistas await you at every step. I am astonished at the revelations which lie hidden in self-control. I am captivated by the infinite varieties of truth. I am filled with joy at the grandeur of the prospect. I am gladdened by its splendor and its peace. Along the way of self-control, there is the joy of victory, the consciousness of expanding and increasing power, the acquisition of the imperishable riches of divine knowledge, and the abiding bliss of service to humankind. Even those who can only travel a portion of the way will develop a strength, achieve a success, and experience a joy which the idle and the thoughtless cannot possibly know. And those of you who will go all the way will become a spiritual conqueror. You will triumph over all evil and will blot it out. You will gaze with enthralled vision upon the majesty of the cosmic order and will enjoy the immortality of truth. Chapter 5. Simplicity and Freedom. You have known what it is to be physically encumbered by some superfluous load, and you have experienced the happy relief of dispensing with such a load. Your experience illustrates the difference between a life burdened with a complexity of desires, beliefs, and speculations, and one rendered simple and free by the satisfaction of its natural needs and a calm contemplation of the facts of existence, eliminating all argument and speculation. There are those who cumber their drawers, cupboards, and rooms with rubbish and clutter. This is carried to such an extent sometimes that the house cannot be properly cleaned, and vermin swarms. There is no use for the rubbish, but they will not part with it, even though by doing so they would get rid of the vermin. But they like to think that it is there, like to feel that they have got it, especially if they are convinced that nobody else has its like. The reason being that it may be of some use someday, or it may become valuable, or it brings up old associations which they occasionally resuscitate and take a paradoxical pleasure in sorrowing over. In a sweet, methodical, well-managed house, such superfluities bringing with them dirt, discomfort, and care are not allowed to accumulate. Or should they have accumulated, they are gathered up and consigned to the fire and the trash bin when it's decided to cleanse and restore the house and give it light, comfort, and freedom. In a like manner, the vast majority hoard up in their minds mental rubbish and clutter, clinging tenaciously to it and fear losing it. Insatiable desires, thirsty cravings for unlawful and unnatural pleasures, conflicting beliefs about miracles, gods, angels, demons, and interminable theological complexities. Hypothesis is piled upon hypothesis, speculation is added to speculation, until the simple, beautiful, all-sufficient facts of life are lost to sight and knowledge beneath the metaphysical pile. Simplicity consists in being rid of this painful confusion of desires and superfluity of opinions, and holding only to that which is permanent and essential. And what is permanent in life? What is essential? Virtue alone is permanent. Character is essential. So simple is life when it is freed from all superfluities and rightly understood and lived, that it can be reduced to a few unmistakable, easy to understand, though hard to practice, principles. And all great minds have so simplified life. Buddha reduced it to 8 virtues, in the practice of which he declared that all men would acquire perfect enlightenment, and these 8 virtues he reduced to 1, which he called compassion. Confucius taught that the perfection of knowledge was contained in 5 virtues, and these he expressed in 1, which he called reciprocity, or sympathy. Jesus reduced the whole of life to the principle of love. Compassion, sympathy, love. These 3 are identical. How simple they are, too. Yet it's difficult to find those who fully understand the depths and heights of these virtues, because anyone who so fully understood them would embody them in practice. They would be complete, perfect, divine. There would be nothing lacking in those of knowledge, virtue, and wisdom. It's only when you set earnestly to work to order your life in accordance with the simple precepts of virtue that you discover what piles of mental rubbish you have hoarded up, and which you are now compelled to throw away. The demands, too, which such a course of conduct make upon your faith, endurance, patience, kindness, humility, reason, and strength of will are, until the mind approaches the necessary condition of purity and simplicity, painful in their severity. The clearing out process, whether of your mind, home, or place of business, is not a light and easy one, but it ends in comfort and repose. All complexities of detail, whether in things material or mental, are reducible to a few fundamental laws and principles by virtue of which they exist and are regulated. Wise beings govern their lives by a few simple rules. A life governed by the central principle of love will be found to be divinely consistent in all its details. Every thought, word, act will fall into proper place, and there will be no conflict and confusion. What, asked the learned man of the Buddhist saint who had acquired a wide reputation for sanctity and wisdom. "What is the most fundamental thing in Buddhism?" The saint replied, "The most fundamental thing in Buddhism is to cease from evil and to learn to do good." "I didn't ask you," said the learned man, "to tell me what every child of 3 knows. I want you to tell me what is the most profound, the most subtle, and the most important thing in Buddhism." "The most profound, the most subtle, the most important thing in Buddhism," said the saint, "is to cease from evil and to learn to do good. It is true that the child of 3 may know it, but grey-haired old men fail to put it into practice." The commentator then goes on to say that the learned man did not want facts. He did not want the truth. He wanted to be given some subtle metaphysical speculation which would give rise to another speculation, and then to another, and then another, and so afford him an opportunity of bringing into play the wonderful intellect of which he was so proud. A member of a philosophical school once proudly said to me, "Our system of metaphysics is the most perfect and the most complicated in the world." I discovered how complicated it was by becoming involved in it and then pursuing the process of disentanglement back to the facts of life, simplicity, and freedom. I have since learned how better to utilize my energy and occupy my time in the pursuit and practice of those virtues that are firm and sure, rather than wasted in the spinning of the pretty but unsubstantial threads of metaphysical cobwebs. But while regarding with disfavor assumption and pride, and all that vanity which mistakes its own hypothesis for reality, I set no premium on ignorance and stupidity. Learning is a good thing. As an end in itself, as a possession to be proud of, it is a dead thing. But as a means to the high ends of human progress and human good, it becomes a living power. Accompanied with a lowly mind, it is a powerful instrument for good. The Buddhist saint was no less learned than his proud questioner, but he was more simple and wise. Even hypotheses will not lead us astray if they are perceived as mere hypotheses and not confounded with facts. Yet the wisest beings dispense with all hypotheses and fall back on the simple practice of virtue. In this way they become divine and arrive at the pinnacle of achievement of simplicity, enlightenment, and liberation. To arrive at the freedom of joy of simplicity, you must not think less, you must think more. Only the thinking must be set to a high and useful purpose and must be concentrated upon the facts and duties of life, instead of dissipated in unprofitable theorizing. A life of simplicity is simple in all its parts, because the heart which governs it has become pure and strong, because it is centered and rested in truth. Harmful luxuries in food and vain superfluities in dress, exaggerations of speech and insincerities of action, thoughts that tend to intellectual display and empty speculation, all of these are set aside in order that virtue may be better understood and more earnestly embraced. The duties of life are undertaken in a spirit from which self is eliminated, and they become transfigured with a new and glorious light, even the light of truth. The great fundamental facts of life, until now hidden from knowledge, are clearly revealed, and the eternal truths about which the talkative theorizers can only guess and argue become substantial possessions. The simple-hearted, the true-hearted, the virtuous and wise are no longer troubled with doubts and fears about the future and the unknown and unknowable. They take their stand upon the duty of the hour and on the known and the knowable. They don't barter away the actual for the hypothetical. They find an abiding security in virtue. They find in truth an illuminating light which, while it reveals to them the true order of the facts of life, throws a halo of divine promise about the abyss of the unknown, and so they are at rest. Simplicity works unhampered and becomes greatness and power. Suspicions, deceptions, impurities, despondencies, whining, doubts, and fears, all these are cast away, left behind and ignored, and the freed man or woman, strong, self-possessed, calm, and pure, works in unclouded assurance and inhabits heavenly plains. Chapter 6. Right Thinking and Repose. Life is a combination of habits, some harmful, some beneficial, all of which take their rise in the one habit of thinking. The thought makes the life. Therefore, right thinking is the most important thing in life. The essential difference between the wise and the foolish is that the wise control their thinking, the foolish are controlled by it. As one of the wise, you determine how and what you will think, and do not allow external things to divert your thought from your main purpose. But the foolish are carried captive by every tyrant thought as it is aroused within them by external things, and they go through life the helpless tools of impulse, whim, and passion. Careless, disordered thinking, commonly called thoughtlessness, is the companion of failure, wrongdoing, and misery. Nothing, no prayers, no religious ceremonies, not even acts of charity can make up for wrong thinking. Only right thinking can rectify a wrong life. Only the right attitude of mind towards men and things can bring repose and peace. The triumphant life is only for those whose heart and intellect are attuned to lofty virtue. You must make your thought logical, sequential, harmonious, symmetrical. You must mold and shape your thinking to fixed principles, and thereby establish your life on the sure foundation of knowledge. You must not merely be kind, you must be intelligently kind, must know why you are kind. Your kindness must be an invariable quality, and not an intermittent impulse mingled with fits of resentment and acts of harshness. You mustn't merely be virtuous under virtuous circumstances. Your virtue must be of a kind that will continue to shine with relentless light when you are assailed with vicious circumstances. You mustn't allow yourself to be hurled from the throne of divine righteousness by the shocks of fate or the praise and blame of those around you. Virtue must be your abiding habitation, your refuge from the whirlwind and the storm. And virtue is not only of the heart, it is also of the intellect, and without this virtue of the intellect, the virtue of the heart is at risk. Reason, like passion, has its vices. Metaphysical speculations are the riot of the intellect, as sensuality is the riot of the affections. The highest flights of speculation, pleasing as they are, reveal no place of rest, and the strained mind must return to facts and righteous principles to find that truth which it seeks. As the soaring bird returns for refuge and rest to its nest in the rock, so must the speculative thinker return to the rock of virtue for security and peace. The intellect must be trained to comprehend the principles of virtue and to understand all that is involved in their practice. Its energies must be restrained from wasteful indulgence in vain subtleties and be directed in the path of righteousness and the way of wisdom. You must distinguish in your own mind between reality and assumption. You must discover the extent of your actual knowledge. You must know what you know. You must also know what you do not know. You must learn to discriminate between belief and knowledge, error and truth. In your search for the right attitude of mind which perceives truth and works out a wise and radiant life, you must be more logical than logic, more merciless in exposing the errors of your own mind than the most sarcastic logician is in exposing the errors of the minds of others. After pursuing this course of discrimination for a short time, you will be astonished to find out how small the extent of your actual knowledge is. Yet you will be gladdened by its possession, for, small as it is the pure gold of knowledge. And what is better, to have a few grains of gold hidden away in tons of ore where it's useless, or to extract the gold and throw away the ore? As the miner sifts away bushels of dull earth to find the sparkling diamond, so you, the spiritual miner, the true thinker, sifts away from your mind the accumulation of opinions, beliefs, speculations, and assumptions to find the bright jewel of truth, which bestows upon its possessor wisdom and enlightenment. And the concentrated knowledge, which is ultimately brought to light by this sifting process, is found to be so closely related to virtue that it cannot be divided from it, cannot be set apart as something different. In his search for knowledge, Socrates discovered virtue. The divine maxims of the great teachers are maxims of virtue. When knowledge is separated from virtue, wisdom is lost. What you practice, that you know. What you do not practice, that you do not know. You may write treatises, preach sermons on love, but if you treat your family harshly or think spitefully of your enemy, what actual knowledge have you about love? In the heart of the man or woman of knowledge, there lives a silent and abiding compassion that shames the fine words of the noisy theorist. Only those whose hearts are free from hatred, who live in peace with all, know what peace is. Cunning definitions of virtue only serve to deepen ignorance when they proceed from vice-stained lips. Knowledge has a deeper source than the mere memorizing of information. That knowledge which proceeds from acquaintance with virtue is divine. The humility which purges the intellect of its empty opinions and vain assumptions also fortifies it with a searching insight and invincible power. There is a divine logic which is indistinguishable from love. The reply, "He that is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone," is unanswerable logic. It is also perfect love. Wrong thinkers are known by their vices. Right thinkers are known by their virtues. Troubles and unrest attack the mind of the wrong thinkers, and they experience no lasting peace. They imagine that others can injure, snub, cheat, degrade, and ruin them. Knowing nothing of the protection of virtue, they seek the protection of self and take refuge in suspicion, spite, resentment, and retaliation, and are burnt in the fire of their own vices. When slandered, they slander in return. When accused, they attack. When attacked, they turn upon their adversary with double fierceness. "I have been treated unjustly," exclaim the wrong thinkers, and then wallow in resentment and misery. Having no insight and unable to distinguish evil from good, they cannot see that their own evil, and not their neighbor's, is the cause of all their trouble. As a right thinker, you are not concerned with thoughts about self and self-protection, and the wrong actions of others towards you cannot cause you trouble or unrest. You cannot think, "This man has wronged me." You perceive that no wrong can reach you but by your own ignorant, unconscious evil deeds. You understand that your welfare is at your own hands, and as such none but yourself can rob you of repose. Virtue is your protection, and retaliation is foreign to you. You hold yourself steadfastly in peace, and resentment cannot enter your heart. Temptation cannot find you unprepared, and it attacks the strong citadel of your mind in vain. Abiding in virtue, you abide in strength and peace. As a right thinker, you have discovered and acquired the right attitude of mind towards mankind and things, the attitude of a profound and loving repose. And this is not resignation, it is wisdom. It's not indifference, but watchful and penetrating insight. You have comprehended the facts of life. You see things as they are. You do not overlook the particulars of life, but read them in the light of cosmic law. See them in their right relations as portions of the universal scheme. You see the universe is upheld by justice. You watch, but do not engage in, the petty quarrels and fleeting rivalries of those around you. You cannot be partisan. Your sympathy is with all. You cannot favor one portion more than the other. You know that good will ultimately conquer in the world, as it has conquered in individuals, that there is a sense in which good already conquers, because evil defeats itself. Good cannot be defeated. Justice cannot be set aside. Whatever mankind may do, justice reigns, and its eternal throne cannot be attacked and threatened, much less conquered and overthrown. This is the source of the true thinker's abiding repose. Having become righteous, you perceive the righteous law. Having acquired love, you understand the eternal love. Having conquered evil, you know that good is supreme. As a true thinker, your heart is free from hatred, lust, and pride. You look out upon the world through eyes washed free from ignorance and evil. Your bitterest enemy arouses no hatred or animosity, but only tender pity and compassion in your heart. You do not talk vainly about things of which you have no knowledge, and your heart is always at peace. And by this you may know that your thoughts are in accordance with the truth, that there is no more bitterness in your heart, that malice has departed from you, that you love where you formerly condemned. You may be learned, but if you are not wise, you will not be a true thinker. You will not triumph over evil by learning. You will not overcome sin and sorrow by much study. You will only conquer evil by conquering yourself. You will only put an end to sorrow by practicing righteousness. The life triumphant is not for the clever, nor the learned, nor the self-confident, but for the pure, the virtuous, the wise. The former achieve their particular success in life, but only the latter achieve the great success, a success so invincible and complete that even an apparent defeat shines with added victory. Virtue cannot be shaken. Virtue cannot be confused. Virtue cannot be overthrown. Those of you who think in accordance with virtue, who act righteously, whose mind is the servant of truth, will conquer in life and in death, because virtue must triumph, and righteousness and truth are the pillars of the universe. Chapter 7. Calmness and Resource. Those who have truth are always self-possessed. Hurry and excitement, anxiety and fear have no place in the purified mind and the true life. Self-conquest results in perpetual calm. Calmness is the radiant light which adds a luster to all the virtues. Like the halo around the head of a saint, it surrounds virtue with its shining light. Without calmness, the greatest strength is but a kind of exaggerated weakness. Where is your spiritual strength? Where indeed is your ordinary manly strength, if you lose your balance with almost every petty disturbance that appears? And what enduring influence can you have if you forget yourself in ignorant abandonment or unseemly rage in the hour of temptation and crisis? The virtuous put a check upon themselves and set a watch upon their passions and emotions. In this way they gain possession of the mind and gradually acquire calmness. And as they acquire calmness, they acquire influence, power, greatness, abiding joy, and fullness and completeness of life. Those who do not put a check upon themselves, whose emotions and passions are their masters, who crave excitement and race after unholy pleasures, these are not yet fit for a life of joyful victory, and can neither appreciate nor receive the beautiful jewel of calmness. Such may pray for peace with their lips, but they do not desire it in their hearts, or the word peace may only mean to them another kind of periodic pleasure which they desire to enjoy. In the life of calm, there are no fitful periods of sinful excitement followed by reactionary hours of sorrow and remorse. There are no foolish elations followed by equally foolish depressions, no degrading actions followed by misery and loss of self-respect. All these things are put away, and what remains is truth, and truth is forever encircled with peace. The calm life is new unbroken bliss. Duties which are frustrating to the ungoverned are things of joy to the calm. Indeed, in the calm life, the word duty receives a new meaning. It is no longer opposed to happiness, but it is one with happiness. The calm, right-seeing man or woman cannot separate joy from duty. Such separation belongs to the mind and life of the pleasure hunter and lover of excitement. Calmness is difficult to attain because most cling blindly to the lower disturbances of the mind for the passing pleasure which these disturbances offer. Even sorrow is sometimes selfishly gloated over as a kind of occasional luxury. But though difficult to attain, the way which leads to its attainment is simple. It consists of abandoning all those excitements and disturbances which are opposed to it, and fortifying oneself in these steadfast virtues which do not change with changing events and circumstances, which have no violent reactions, and which therefore bestow perpetual satisfaction and abiding peace. You only find peace by conquering yourself, By striving day by day after self-possession, greater self-control, greater calmness of mind, you can only be a joy to yourself and a blessing to others to the degree that you have command of yourself, and such self-command is gained only by persistent practice. You must conquer your weaknesses by daily effort, must understand them and study how to eliminate them from your character. If you continue to strive, not giving way, you will gradually become victorious. Each little victory gained, though there is a sense in which no victory can be called little, will be so much more calmness acquired and added to your character as an eternal possession. In this way you will make yourself strong, capable, and blessed, fit to perform your duties faultlessly, and to meet all events with an untroubled spirit. But even if you do not reach that supreme calm which no shock can disturb in this life, you will become sufficiently self-possessed and pure to enable yourself to fight the battle of life fearlessly, and to leave the world a little richer for having known the goodness of your presence. By constantly overcoming self, you gain a knowledge of the subtle intricacies of your mind. And it is this divine knowledge which enables you to become established in calmness. Without self-knowledge there can be no abiding peace of mind, and those who are carried away by tempestuous passions cannot approach the holy place where calmness reigns. The weak-minded are like one who, having mounted a fiery steed, allows it to run away with them and carry them wherever it wants. The strong-minded are like one who, having mounted the steed, governs it with a masterly hand, and makes it go in whatever direction and whatever speed they command. Calmness is the crowning beauty of a character that has become, or is becoming, divine, and is restful and peace-giving to all who come in contact with it. Those who are still in their weakness and doubt find the presence of the calm mind restful to their troubled minds, inspiring to their faltered feet, and rich with healing and comfort in the hour of sorrow, because those who are strong to overcome self are strong to help others. Those who have conquered soul weariness are strong to help the weary on the way. That calmness of mind which is not disturbed or overthrown by trials and emergencies, or by the accusations, slanders, and misinterpretations of others, is born of great spiritual strength. It is the true indication of an enlightened and wise understanding. The calm mind is the exalted mind. Divinely gentle and externally strong are those who do not lose their serenity, nor forget their peace when falsehoods and indignities are heaped upon them. Such calmness is the perfect flower of self-control. It has been slowly and laboriously gained by patiently passing through the fires of suffering, by subjecting the mind to a long process of purification. As one of the calm-minded, you have discovered the spring of both happiness and knowledge within yourself, and it's a spring that can never run dry. Your powers are at your full command, and there is no limit to your resources. In whatever direction you employ your energies, you will manifest originality and power. And this is so because you deal with things as they are, and not with mere opinions about things. If you have any opinions left, you are no longer enamored of them, but you see them as they are, mere opinions, and therefore of no intrinsic value. You have abolished egotism, and, by obedience to law, you have become one with the power in nature and the universe. Your resources are not restricted by selfishness, your energies not hindered by pride. There is a sense in which you have stopped regarding anything as your own. Even your virtues belong to truth, and not exclusively to yourself. You have become a conscious principle of cosmic power, and are no longer a mean, dwarfed thing seeking petty personal ends. And having put away self, you have put away the greed, the misery, the troubles and fears which belong to self. You act calmly and accept all consequences with equal calmness. You are efficient and accurate, and perceive all that is involved in any undertaking. You do not work blindly, and you know that there is no chance of favor. Your calm mind is like the surface of a still lake. It reflects life and the things of life truly. whereas the troubled mind, like the troubled surface of the lake, gives back a distorted image of all things which fall upon it. Gazing into the serene depths of yourself as one of the self-conquered, you just see a reflection of the universe. You see the cosmic perfection, see the equity in your own lot. Even those things which are regarded by the world as unjust and grievous, and which formerly appeared so to you, are now known to be the effects of your own past deeds, and are therefore joyfully accepted as portions of the perfect whole. And so calmness remains with you with its endless fund of resources in joy and enlightenment. Being innately calm, you succeed where the disturbed fail. Having successfully grappled with the most intricate difficulties and problems within your own heart, you are fit to deal with any external difficulty. Having succeeded in governing the within, you are best equipped to govern the without. The calm mind perceives a difficulty in all its bearings and understands how best to meet it. The disturbed mind is the lost mind. It has become blind, seeing not whither to go, but only feeling its own unhappiness and fear. The resources of the calm-minded are superior to all incidents which may befall them. Nothing can alarm you, nothing can find you unprepared, nothing can shake your strong and steadfast mind. Wheresoever duty may call you, there will your strength manifest itself. There will your mind, free from the frictions of self, exhibit its silent and patient power. Whether you be engaged in worldly things or spiritual things, you will do your work with concentrated vigor and penetrating insight. Calmness means that the mind is harmoniously adjusted, perfectly poised. All its extremes, once so antagonistic and painful, are reconciled, merged into one grand central principle with which the mind has identified itself. It means that the runaway passions are tamed and subjected, the intellect is purified, and the will is merged into the cosmic will. That is, it is no longer centered upon narrow personal ends, but is concerned with the good of all. You are not wholly victorious until you are perpetually calm. While passing things disturb you, your understanding is unripe, your heart is not altogether pure. You cannot advance in the triumph of life while you flatter and deceive yourself. You must wake and be fully alive to the fact that your sins, sorrows, and troubles are of your own making, and belong to your own imperfect condition. You must understand that your miseries have their root in your own sins, and not in the sins of others. You must strive after calmness as the covetous strive after riches, and you must not rest satisfied with any partial attainment. In this way, you will grow in grace and wisdom, in strength and peace, and calmness will descend upon your spirit as the refreshing dew descends upon the flowers. Where the calm mind is, there is strength and rest, there is love and wisdom. Having fought countless battles against self successfully, after long and hard work in secret against your own failings, you have triumphed at last. Chapter 8. Insight and Nobility. In the pursuit and practice of virtue, there eventually comes a time when a divine insight dawns upon the mind. It searches into the causes and principles of things which, once attained, establishes its possessor firmly in virtue. It renders you invulnerable to the assaults of temptation and invincible in your work for the world. When the understanding is ripened by the culture of virtue, vicious inclinations disappear, and wrongdoing becomes impossible. When individual conduct is perceived as an unbroken series of causes and effects, the perceiving mind finally decides for virtue, and the lower selfish elements are just cast away forever. Until you perceive the just law which operates in human life, whatever virtue you may manifest at any given time, you are not firmly established in nobility of character, you are not fully armored with righteousness, and are not safely lodged in your final refuge. Not having acquired that perfect insight which knows good and evil, and which perceives the effects of all deeds, both good and bad, You break down when attacked by temptation at those points in your character which are not well fortified, those which have so far dimmed your spiritual insight and barred you from perfect vision. By breaking down in this way, you discover within that which has hindered you, and by setting to work to remove the hindrance, you ascend still higher in the scale of virtue, and approach nearer to the perfect insight into the true order of life which makes mankind divine. Under certain circumstances, held in restraint by the influence of your friends, by custom and environment, and not by your own inherent purity and strength, you will appear to have, and may believe you possess, a virtue of which you know nothing in reality, and your lack of such virtue only appears when all outward restraints are withdrawn, and, under temptation, the concealed weakness and vice manifest themselves. On the other hand, those of you of superior virtue will seem, in a familiar environment, to be much the same as your weaker fellows, and your virtue will not be apparent to those about you. But when you are suddenly brought in contact with great temptations or extraordinary events, your latent virtue appears in all its beauty and strength. Insight destroys the dominion of evil and reveals the faultless operation of the good law. Being of perfect insight, you cannot sin, because you fully understand the nature of good and evil, and it is impossible for one who knows good and evil in all their ramifications of cause and effect to choose the evil and reject the good. Just as the sane would not choose ashes in preference to food, so the spiritually awakened would not choose evil in preference to good. The presence of sin is an indication of self-delusion and of ignorance. The spiritual vision is warped or undeveloped, and there is confusion of mind concerning the nature of good and evil. In the early stages of virtue, you array yourself against the forces of evil which appear to you to be overpowering in their might, and almost, if not entirely, unconquerable. But, with the advent of insight, a new light is thrown upon the nature of things, and evil appears as it actually is, a small, dark, powerless thing, a mere negation, and not a formidable force or combination of forces. As a man or woman of insight, you know that the root of evil is ignorance, and not an intelligent power, and that all sin and suffering proceed therefrom. So, knowing evil to be merely a deprivation of good, you cannot hate it, but manifest compassion for all sinning and suffering beings. Indeed, having so far conquered the evil in your own heart, knowing the nature and source of evil, you cannot possibly hate, dislike, or despise any being, no matter how far removed from virtue it may be. But, while fully perceiving the degradation of character, you understand the dark spiritual condition from which such degradation springs, and so you pity and help, where, without insight, you would hate and despise. Love ever attends upon insight, and pity and compassion wait upon knowledge. That insight which proceeds from self-purification and long acquaintance with virtue makes itself manifest in the form of ripeness of character. There is an unchanging strength and sweetness combined, a clearness of intellect, a virile strength of will, and a gentleness of heart, a combination which denotes a cultured, mellowed, perfected being, one who has acquired sympathy, compassion, purity, and wisdom. Thus, while goodness gives insight, insight renders goodness permanent, fixes the mind in the love and practice of all that is pure and noble, and stamps upon mankind's brow the seal of divinity. Those of you whose goodness is of the kind that doesn't alter with altered environment, or with the changing attitudes of those around you, have reached the divine goodness. You understand the supreme good. You are no longer concerned with evil as a thing that can harm, but you are concerned with good only, and so you ignore evil and recognize only good. You perceive that evil is committed out of the mistaken idea of good, and, thus perceiving, no hatred against any can enter your peaceful heart. Your life as such a being is powerful, no matter how obscure it may be, for goodness is the most powerful thing in the world. The fact of your living and moving among others confers incalculable benefit upon the race, although during your lifetime this may not be perceived or understood. So powerful is goodness that the destiny of the world was, is, and will be in the hands of the good. Those of you who are good are the guides and emancipators of humanity. In the present period of its development, you are taking the race rapidly along in its evolutionary journey, and doing this not in any mystical or miraculous sense, but in a very practical and normal sense, by your exemplary lives, by the power of your deeds. You, the good men and women who help the world, are not wonder workers, though undeveloped minds have ever tried to make you such, but the workers of righteousness, servants of the good law, servants of the light. The world never was, is not, and never will be under the dominion of evil, for such a condition would mean non-existence, evil being merely the negation of good, as darkness is the negation of light. It is light and not darkness which is the sustaining power. Evil is the weakest thing in the world and cannot accomplish anything. The universe not only makes for good, the universe is good, and evil always falls short and fails. Insight is seeing in the light of truth, that light which is the revealer of all things. As the light of day reveals all objects in the world in their proper forms, so when the light of truth enters the mind, it reveals all the things of life in their proper proportions. You who search your own hearts by the aid of truth, search all hearts. You who by long searching have perceived the perfect law which is operative in your mind, have revealed the divine law which is the stay and substance of the universe. Insight disperses error and puts an end to superstition. Sin is the only error. People attack each other's beliefs and remain in ignorance. When they get rid of their own sins, they will become enlightened. Superstition springs from sin. Looking through darkened eyes, people see evil things which are delusions of ignorance, conceiving in their hearts unlawful things. Their imagination is troubled with monsters and terrors which have no existence in reality. Where there is pure insight, there is no fear. Devils, demons, wrathful and jealous gods, vampires and evil spirits, and all the hideous host of the ideological monsters have vanished from the universe along with the feverish nightmare which gave them birth. And before the rapt gaze of the purified one there spreads a universe of orderly beauty and inviolate law. As a being of insight, you live in the blissful vision of the saints, not as a fleeting experience in a moment of exceptional purity, but as a constant normal condition of mind. You have completed your long journey through self and sorrow, and are at peace. You have conquered and are glad. You see all the sin, misery, and pain that is in the world more clearly and vividly than others, but you now see it as it is in its cause, inception, growth, and fruitage, not as it appeared to you when you were blindly involved in it and your mind was distorted by impurities. You watch the growth of beings from the immature to the mature, through periods of change and pain with tender compassion and solicitude, as the mother watches the growth of her child through the helpless period of its infancy. You see justice operating in all things. While most are waxing wrathful over the triumph of wrong, you know that wrong has not triumphed, but is brought to naught. You see the overruling right which, though concealed from worldly eyes, remains forever unshaken. You see the littleness, the puny weakness, the blind folly of evil as compared with the majesty and invincible power and the all-seeing wisdom of good. And thus, knowing and seeing, your mind is finally fixed in that which is good. You are devoted to truth, and your delight is in the doing of righteousness. When insight is born in the mind, reality stands revealed. Not a metaphysical reality distinct from the universe, not a speculative reality other than the things of life, but the reality of the universe itself, the reality of things in themselves. Insight is triumphant over change and decay, for it perceives the abiding in change, the eternal in the transient, the immortal in the things which pass away. And herein is the meaning of that fixed nobility of character of the saints and sages, and the superlativity of the great teachers of the race, that they perceive and abide in reality. They know life in its completion. They understand and obey the righteous law. Having conquered self, they have conquered all delusions. Having triumphed over sin, they have triumphed over sorrow. Having purified themselves, they see the perfect cosmos. You who choose the right, the pure, the good, and cling to them through all misunderstandings, insults, and defeat, eventually reach the place of insight and your eyes open upon the world of truth. Then your painful discipline is ended. The lower conditions no more affect you or cause you sorrow. Purity and joy abide with you, and the universe again rejoices in the triumph of good and hails another conqueror. Chapter 9. Man the Master. By the mastery of self, a distinct form of consciousness is evolved, which some would call divine. It is distinguished from that ordinary human consciousness, which craves personal advantages and gratifications on the one hand, and is involved in remorse and sorrow on the other. This divine consciousness concerns itself with humanity and the universe, with eternal verities, with righteousness, wisdom, and truth, and not with pleasures, protection, and preservation of the personality. Not that personal pleasure is destroyed, but that it is no longer craved and sought. It no longer takes a foremost place. It is purified, and it is received as the effect of right thought and action, and is no longer an end in itself. In divine consciousness there is neither sin nor sorrow. Even the sense of sin has passed away, and the true order and purpose of life being revealed, no cause is found for lamentation. Jesus called this state of consciousness the kingdom of heaven. Buddha named it nirvana. Lao Tse's term for it was Tao. Emerson referred to it as the oversoul, and Dr. Buck calls it cosmic consciousness in his valuable work bearing that title. The ordinary human consciousness is self-consciousness. Self, the personality, is placed before everything else. There are ceaseless anxieties and fears concerning the self. Its possible loss is thought to be the most grievous calamity, and its eternal preservation the most important thing in the universe. In divine consciousness, all this has passed away. Self has disappeared. Therefore, there can be no more fears and anxieties concerning self, and things are considered and known as they are, and not as they afford pleasure or cause pain to self, not as self wishes them to be for its own temporal or eternal happiness. The self-conscious are subject to desire. The divinely conscious are masters of desire. The former considers what is pleasant or unpleasant. The latter acts from the righteous law without reference to pleasure or pain. The race is passing through self-consciousness to divine consciousness, through the slavery of self with its sense of sin and shame to the freedom of truth with its sense of purity and power. The great teachers and saviors of the race have already attained. In former existences they have already passed through all forms of self-consciousness, and now, having subjugated self, have become divinely conscious. They have reached the summit of evolution on this earth, and have no further need to be reborn in the self-conscious form. They are masters of life. Having conquered self, they have acquired the supreme knowledge. Some of them are worshipped as God because they manifest a wisdom and a consciousness which is quite distinct from the normal self-consciousness of humanity, and which is therefore regarded with and surrounded by incomprehensible mystery. Yet, in this divine consciousness there is no mystery, but, on the contrary, a transparent simplicity which becomes apparent when the confusions of self are dispersed. The abiding gentleness, the sublime wisdom, the perfect calm of the great teachers, qualities which appear supernatural when viewed from the self-conscious state, are seen to be simple and natural when the first glimmering of divine consciousness dawns in the mind. And such divine consciousness does not appear until a high degree of righteousness is attained by self-conscious men and women. You become divinely conscious, divinely wise, divinely gentle and strong in the measure that you subdue and dominate within those passions by which humanity is subdued and dominated. The divine master is one who has attained mastery over self. The abiding nobility, beneficent characteristics, and unobtrusive virtue which mark off the spiritually enlightened being from others are the fruits of self-conquest, the logical outcome of a long struggle to master and comprehend those mental forces which the self-conscious blindly obey without understanding. The self-conscious are slaves to self. Obeying self-centered inclinations, they are in submission to their passions, and to the sorrows and pains which allegiance to those passions inflict upon them. They are conscious of sin and sorrow, but see no way out of these conditions, and so they invent theologies which they substitute for effort, and which, while affording them fitful comfort through uncertain hope, leave them the easy victim of sin and the willing prey of sorrow. As one of the divinely conscious, you are the master of self. You obey truth and not self. You curb and direct your inclinations and are conscious of a growing power over sin and sorrow. You see that there is a way out of these conditions by the path of self-mastery. You need no theologies to aid you, but exert yourself in right doing, and are gladdened by the sense of victory and increasing purity and power. When your mastery is complete, you have no inclinations but those which accord with truth. You have then become the conqueror of sin and are no longer subject to sorrow. Enlightened, wise, and ever more peaceful and happy are those of you who have subjected, overcome, and cast out the turbulent self that reigned within. The tempests of sorrow do not chill you. The cares and troubles which beset the vast majority pass you by, and no evil thing overtakes you. Secure in divine virtue, no enemy can overthrow you, no foe can do you harm. Kind and peaceful, no person, power, nor place can rob you of repose. There is no enemy but self, no darkness but ignorance, no suffering but that which springs from the insubordinate elements of one's own nature. No one who is truly wise is involved in likes and dislikes, wishes and regrets, desires and disappointments, sin and sorrow. All these conditions belong to the self-conscious state and are indications of foolishness, weakness, and subjection. Those of you are truly wise who, in the midst of worldly duties, are always calm, always gentle, always patient. You accept things as they are and do not wish nor grieve, desire nor regret. These things belong to the divinely conscious state, the dominion of truth, and are indications of enlightenment, strength, and mastery. You who do not desire riches, fame, or pleasures, who enjoy what you have, yet do not lament or complain when it's taken from you, you are wise indeed. Those who do desire riches, fame, and pleasure, who are discontented with what they have, yet mourn when it's taken from them, they are indeed foolish. Men and women are fitted for conquest, but the conquest of territory will not be of use. They must resort to the conquest of self. The conquest of territory renders mankind a temporal ruler, but the conquest of self makes you an eternal conqueror. You are destined for mastery, not the mastery of your fellow man by force, but the mastery of your own nature by self-control. The mastery of your fellow man by force is the crown of egotism, but the mastery of self by self-control is the crown of humility. Those of you who have shaken off the service of self for the service of truth, who have established yourself in the eternal verities, are masters. You are crowned not only with perfect righteousness, but with divine wisdom. You have overcome the disturbances of mind and the shocks of life. You are superior to all circumstances. You are the calm spectator, but no longer the helpless tool of events. No more a sinning, weeping, repenting mortal. You are pure, rejoicing, upright, immortal. You perceive the course of things with a glad and peaceful heart, a divine conqueror, master of life and death. Chapter 10. Knowledge and Victory. Faith is the beginning of the triumphant life, but knowledge is its consummation. Faith reveals the way, but knowledge is the goal. Faith suffers many afflictions. Knowledge has transcended affliction. Faith endures. Knowledge loves. Faith walks in darkness, but believes. Knowledge acts in light and knows. Faith inspires to effort. Knowledge crowns effort with success. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. Knowledge is the substance of those things possessed. Faith is the helpful staff of the pilgrim. Knowledge is the city of refuge at the journey's end. Without faith, there will be no knowledge, but when knowledge is acquired, the work of faith is finished. The life triumphant is a life of knowledge, and by knowledge is meant not book learning, but life learning, not superficial facts committed to memory, but the deep facts and truths of life, grasped and comprehended. Apart from this knowledge, there is no victory for men and women, no rest for their weary feet, no refuge for their aching hearts. There is no salvation for the foolish except by becoming wise. There is no salvation for the sinful except by becoming pure. There is no liberation for anyone from the turmoil and troubles of life but through divine knowledge reached by the pathway of a pure and blameless life. Nowhere is there permanent peace except in an enlightened condition of mind, and a pure life and an enlightened mind are identical. But there is salvation for the foolish because wisdom can be acquired. There is salvation for the sinful because purity can be embraced. There is liberation for all mankind from the troubles and turmoil of life, because whosoever wills to do so, whether rich or poor, learned or unlearned, can enter the lowly way of blamelessness which leads to perfect knowledge. And because of this, that there is deliverance for the captives and victory for the defeated, there is rejoicing in the high places, and the universe is glad. As one of knowledge, being victorious over yourself, you are victorious over sin, over evil, over all the disharmonies of life. Out of the old mind, marred by sin and sorrow, you have framed a new mind, glorified by purity and peace. You have died out of the old world of evil and are reborn into a new world where love and faultless law prevail, where evil is not, and you have become deathless in immortal good. Anxiety and fear, grief and lamentation, disappointment and regret, wretchedness, misery and remorse, these things have no part in the world of the wise. They are the shadowy inhabitants of the world of self and cannot live. No, they are seen to have no sustainability in the light of wisdom. The dark things of life are the dark conditions of a mind not yet illuminated by the light of wisdom. They follow self as the shadow of substance. Where selfish desires go, there they follow. Where sin is, there they are. There is no rest in self. There is no light in self. And where the flames of turbulent passions and fires of consuming desires are rife, the cool airs of wisdom and peace are not felt. Safety and assurance, happiness and repose, satisfaction and contentment, joy and peace, these are the abiding possessions of the wise, earned by right of self-conquest, the results of righteousness, the wages of a blameless life. The substance of a right life is enlightenment, knowledge, and the spirit of knowledge is peace. To be victorious over self in all the issues of life is to know life as it is in reality, and not as it appears in the nightmare of self. It is to be in peace in all passages, and not be stricken with trouble and grief in the common happenings of life. As the ripe scholar, you are no more troubled by incorrect work and lessons imperfectly done, and the painful reproof and punishment formerly inflicted by your teachers are left behind forever. So you, the now perfected scholar in virtue, the wise man and woman, the enlightened doer of righteousness, are no more troubled with wrongdoing and foolishness, which are merely the imperfectly accomplished lessons of life, and the scourging of sorrow and remorse have passed away forever. You, the skilled scholar, have no more doubt or fear concerning your ability. You have overcome and dispersed the ignorance of your intellect. You have attained to learning, and you know that you have attained. And you know this because, having undergone innumerable tests in the forms of lessons and examinations, you have at last proved your skill by passing successfully through the severest tests of scholarship. And now you no longer fear but rejoice when severe tests are applied to prove your ability. You are capable, confident, and glad. Even so, you, the skilled doer of righteousness, are no more troubled with doubt and fear concerning your destiny. You have overcome and dispersed the ignorance of your heart. You have attained to wisdom, and you know that you have attained. And you know this because where you formerly failed and fell when tested by the wrong conduct of others, you now maintain your patience and calmness under the severest tests of accusation and reproof. Herein is the glory and victory of divine knowledge, that understanding the nature of deeds, both good and bad, the enlightened doer of good deeds no longer suffers through the bad deeds of others. Their actions towards you can never cause you pain and sorrow, nor rob you of your peace. Having taken refuge in good, evil can no more reach nor harm you. You return good for evil, and overcome the weakness of evil by the power of good. Those who are involved in bad deeds imagine that the bad deeds of others are powerful to do them injury and are filled with grievous harm against them. They are stung with pain and overwhelmed with sorrow, not for their own bad deeds, for these they do not see, but for the wrong deeds of others. Involved in ignorance, they have no spiritual strength, no refuge, and no abiding peace. You, victorious over self, are the true seer. You are not the seer of spirits or supernatural phenomena, for such seeing is narrow and illusory. You are the seer of life as it is, both in its particular aspects and in its divine principles, the seer of the spiritual universe of cosmic law, cosmic love, and cosmic liberty. Those of you of knowledge and victory, who have shaken off the painful dreams of self, have awakened with a new vision which beholds a new and glorified universe. You are the seer of the eternal, and are blessed with perfect love and endless peace. You are lifted far above all sordid desires, narrow aims, and selfish love and hate, and being so lifted up, you perceive the lawful course of things, and do not grieve when overtaken by the inevitable. You are above the world of sorrow, not because you've become cold and cruel, but because you abide in love where no thought of self can enter, and where the well-being of others is all in all. You are sorrowless because you are selfless. You are serene because you know that whatever you receive, it is good, and whatever is taken from you, that also is good. You have transmuted sorrow into love, and are filled with infinite tenderness and abounding compassion. Your power is not violent, ambitious, worldly, but pure, peaceful, heavenly, and you are possessed of a hidden strength which knows how to stand and when to bend for the good of others and of the world. You are a teacher, though you speak but little. You are a master, yet have no desire to rule others. You are a conqueror, but make no attempt to subdue your fellow men. You have become a conscious instrument for the outworking of cosmic law, and are an intelligent, enlightened power directing the evolution of the race. At this, the beginning of a new epoch, let the good news again go forth throughout the world that there is a purity for the ignorant and sinful, comfort for the afflicted, healing for the broken-hearted, and triumph for the defeated. In your heart, O man, O woman, stained as it is with sin and torn with conflicting desires, there is a place of power, a citadel of strength. You are the dwelling place of the supreme good, and the scepter of victory awaits you. Deep in your consciousness is the high seat of empire. Arise, O stricken one. Ascend your rightly throne.